Welcome in to Greenville Grit. This is Greenville Residents in Touch with your hosts, Terry Williams and Michael Overton. This is the show that keeps you connected and in touch with the issues that affect what's happening in your community. Greenville Grit is sponsored by Greenville Toyota, the Overton Group. And now, here are your hosts for Greenville Grit, Terry Williams and Michael Overton.
Good evening and welcome to Greenville Grit. I'm Terry Williams.
And I'm Michael Overton. Terry, good to see you tonight. We don't have a guest with us tonight. We might have someone joining us in a few minutes, hopefully a special guest. But we've got a lot to talk about with what's going on in the city with budget just passed last week and some of the other items that they've done.
Possibility of a bond in the future.
That's right. We've got a lot of discussion about the bond, and so we'll get into that. Want to thank our sponsors before we get into the show. We need to always thank Greenville Toyota for being a part of the show since the beginning. We need to thank Craig Ghost and the Greenville Toyota team. If you're looking for a new Toyota or Scion vehicle or a new used car, or you need your car serviced, go see those guys. They're probably one of the best dealerships in Greenville. I've had the opportunity to buy a lot of cars from them, so it's been wonderful to do that. Also, the Overton Group.
That's right.
That's
Thank
my
you,
deal.
Michael. You keep on.
Office in Greenville and in New Bern for commercial real estate and property management, as well as residential real estate and business brokerage.
Right.
So if you need any help with any of that in Greenville, New Bern, or anywhere in eastern North Carolina, please give us a call.
And then we have a new sponsor.
Ribeyes.
Yeah.
I love steak. I know we talked about last week. My dad ran the meat department at Overton Supermarket.
That's right.
And that was his deal with the best meats in town. And I know a good steak. I had the opportunity growing up. We always had the best meats at dinner. I never eat vegetables. Anyone that knows me knows I don't eat vegetables, but I eat a lot of meat. And they've got a good deal over there. So go join those guys, Ribeyes, and see Joey Wood, who's the proprietor for that. We'd love to show them the support that Greenville can give them.
And they have a great salad bar.
That's right. We are going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come on with our special guest, former council person. You'll see who it is in 2 minutes. Welcome back to the Greenville Grit. I'm Michael Overton with my co-host Terry Williams. We have an awesome guest on, Max Ray Joyner, former council member for how many terms? 2 terms, 3 terms? Three terms. City of Greenville District 5. It's the seat that I ran for. Had the opportunity to work with Max during that and the support he gave me. And man, this is cool having you on here, Max. Thank you for joining the show.
Y'all literally dragged me in off the street.
We did. You just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time for this.
That's right. But I'm glad to be here.
Thank you
very much.
I think, Terry, you really said it right. You had one thing you wanted to bring up
very interesting
for Max to talk about, and he was so involved in the last time he was on the council. So let's talk about budget.
Well, everybody knows what went on at the city council meeting last Thursday night. Very long meeting. I stayed till 11:15. They stayed till 12, still discussing all sorts of things. But I think one thing a theme that came up that Alan mentioned several times was the process and how they came about scurrying in and passing this budget so quickly without a whole lot of conversation. So I think I'd like to know the difference maybe that you perceive they handled going into the budget and approving it this time versus maybe when you were serving.
Well, first of all, the budget it's a tough item, and I've been a part of 3 different budgets, and it takes a lot of time and effort. But what I thought we did the last time under Alan Thomas's leadership was we had a lot of budget workshops where we had some input. The citizens were invited. We had each department head just come and show us what his budget was and explain it to us. And then after we heard that, we could make some adjustments if we needed to, if we didn't agree with what it was. This time, I just think the budget process was done entirely different. A lot of folks on the council are talking about everything needs to be open, and I thought the other process was a whole lot more open than this process. And then what really caught me off guard was when the tax increase was added to the agenda the night of the meeting. And if you followed Greenville City Council politics, that was something that I'm going to say the other side because everybody knows the sides on it. The other side really complained last year when Dennis Mitchell tried to just not vote on economic development, but add economic development to an agenda.
Just to discuss it.
Just to discuss it. And so that really caught me off guard, and Candy Smith wasn't even at that meeting. The citizens didn't have time to prepare for questions on the tax increase, and I just thought that was very disrespectful to the citizens and a complete turnaround what the other side of the council was preaching less than a year ago.
Well, they did it once, they did it twice.
Well, I think the second time it was already part of the agenda, though, wasn't it? So this was something that was added the day of the meeting.
Was it part of the agenda or not? Though,
It was sprung mighty quickly, though,
Yeah,
without
well,
only
no public hearing.
Well, I think if you're going to raise taxes, you need to have the public's
Right.
involvement on it. And so even if they hadn't raised any taxes, the fees were already increased. The stormwater fee was,
right.
the trash fee, the sanitation fee. And so I just, if I'd been a part of it, and I didn't run this time, so I gave up my right to be a part of it, but I just thought that under Alan Thomas's leadership a year ago, it was much more open to the citizens, and the citizens had a lot more input.
Well, it frustrates me a little bit because they blame it all on the state. And I'm not saying the state doesn't have some responsibility for springing something on late, but you can't tell me there's not $500,000 sitting
Somewhere.
allocated somewhere that we could have looked for. I mean, 150,000 at the town commons is not earmarked for anything.
You want my opinion on?
I would love you. That's why you're on the show, Mac.
Well,
That's why we got you here.
Like I said, I wasn't prepared. I just walked in, and
I know,
and
perfect
so
timing for us.
we haven't talked about this prior to it, and I didn't know what questions you would go, which way y'all would go. But Wayne Bowers, who was the city manager before Barbara was, and Barbara's doing an excellent job. We're lucky to have her.
I think so too.
Wayne Bowers told us that that was going to be cut. My terminology is wrong, but the fee and the privilege license fee. He said so that we knew that. I think Barbara's been here 18 months, so we knew 2 years ago
Right.
that the state was talking about cutting that fee, and there was plenty of time to prepare for that. And all council members should have been aware a long time ago that was coming.
Well, they must not have been aware because they voted to remove the cap.
I'll tell you exactly what happened. That's what happened. An alarm went off in Raleigh when Greenville decided to vote to release the cap on those privilege licenses.
And they've been trying to raise the cap for, that's something I blocked for years. I
Right.
just don't think because lawyers didn't pay that privilege
Right.
license fee, doctor's offices didn't.
That's something I did not know. I did not know that
about
everybody
half
didn't
the
pay.
businesses in town didn't pay it, and it wasn't a fair tax.
Right.
If it was a fair tax, it should have been charged the same for everybody. Then they started charging the I don't want to call them the gambling houses, but the
Internet
the sweepstakes. They started charging them a higher fee, and I just think if it's a legal business, everybody ought to be treated the same. And so,
Right.
but the city council knew. We've had members of the city council on there for going on at least Marion being on this our 5th year, Calvin be his 7th. That they knew about this 2 years ago that this was coming. So it shouldn't have been a surprise. And when they were talking about cutting it to the bone, and we've been cut to the bone, I still see what I consider some areas that we could still cut or move money around on.
Well, it seems like that the legislature has said they will try in some form or fashion to make up for the cuts that they, passed down to the cities. But when they were presenting the different areas where they had funds set up, I watched the part of the tape again today, and Chris Paget and Bernita were going through the different departments where there were funds set aside, huge amounts of money, and I know they're necessary, so I'm not, but even in the Facilities Improvement Fund, in the health surplus, which may or may not could have been taken
Well,
from.
that's about $1.5 million on health surplus.
$13.1 million is set aside in the surplus. What I'm getting at, vehicle replacement fund is $6 million. It seems like to me that we could have found $100,000 in a few different places to put together what they're anticipating. Don't even know really if it's going to be a shortfall yet. They're anticipating that, according to what Barbara told us last week, of the 588 or 600,000. It seems like rather than jump and rush to do an additional tax, that we could have waited because it's not going to affect the budget until 2015, which, even though they're passing that budget this year, you still vote and review on it again every year. Is that not right?
And you can make any change
That's
you want.
right.
And I think Candace Smith, some of her comments, I think were dead on. She
Right.
She did a
said
good
you're
job.
going to have to grow our way out of this. You can't tax
Right.
our way out of this.
Well, I think Alan said it right too. You increase your tax base.
That's right.
And I think that's part of the frustration. Well, it is for me. I'm sure for a lot of people, especially that are business people and people that are interested in bringing jobs to their areas. There's not been any discussion, at least from what I've heard this year, on economic development for the city or from this council. I mean, I don't know if you've listened to the meetings, but
well, they didn't have any workshops on it, and that's what we did last time. But that's how we're going to grow. That's how the city of Greenville is going to increase your tax base.
Well, there were 13 workshops or meetings about the budget when you all were on it on the last budget.
There were a bunch of them. Was that many?
It was 13, and I don't recall any budget meetings that were open to the public from the time that it was presented to this city council. April 7th, I believe, was the day, until it was passed in June. Well, first of all, there wouldn't have been enough time. They should have been discussing it way back in December,
talking about foreign
in January,
related.
but they were so tied up in the foreign related, they didn't have time to talk about the budget. So that's
so
where
let's
we
talk
are with
about
that.
let's talk about some things that they've accomplished. Our current city council.
Current city council's
So here, I've got a list of some things, 4 or 5 items, and we can talk about each in length or pick on them or whatever we want to do. It's easy for us because we're not on the council. We're not behind that seat. But eminent domain. They passed eminent domain on a private citizens. First time I've heard that being done in Greenville in a long time.
We did that earlier when we were the train on Arlington Boulevard. We used eminent domain. It used to be Reasonable Reese's Furniture Store. We used eminent domain on that, and so I voted for that. So that's something I did 3 years ago. But it was a closed, vacant building that the city was renting at that time for storing chairs, and we were using it as storage. And so.
Right.
Eminent domain, that's a very touchy subject. If you want to make if you're doing it to make progress and not, I believe it, but it's just got to fit the right niche. And I can't even remember the eminent domain was on the Greenway, and that was. I don't really know enough about that, but I know anytime you use eminent domain, it's a very sensitive topic.
It is. It is. Amortization. That discussion came up. Fortunately. It did not get passed, but this had to do with the foreign related rule of trying to release the grandfather or wind that down. That would have been. That's
something Marion Blackburn tried to use 3 years ago when she made the motion for amortization on the bars downtown. Tried to amortize them where they'd be wouldn't be zoned properly in 5 years. So that's something that.
So intentionally shutting businesses down, basically.
Like I said, that's that side or those council people who I didn't really agree with. That's the second time that's been tried to be used in a 5-year period. But if you do something like that, people will not invest in your city because once you pass a law, that's a law. And if you're going to waffle back and forth every 2 or 3 years, people aren't going to come here and invest money because they're not going to know if that law is going to be changed or not changed. Right. And you're not going to be grandfathered. You can't have amortization. You've got to have the grandfather clause in there for people to want to come invest their dollars in Greenville.
That's right.
3 tax increases, and that would be counted part of the privilege tax. Taking the cap off of that could be considered one.
Which is how they voted,
and then the 2 1-cent tax increases. And all I can say is thank you, county commissioners, for not pushing another tax increase through.
I thought we'd have been better served with a bond referendum. You get more bang for your buck.
Well, they're still pushing the bond referendum.
I just don't think it's got a chance now that we've already passed the tax increase. I just really don't. But I agree with the bond referendum for roads and infrastructure. For parks right now, I couldn't do it maybe in 2 or 3 years.
Right.
We need to start Greenville needs to start growing again.
Right.
When I was first on the council 6 years ago, it was growing 7-8. Our budget was growing 7 or 8 or 9% a year because Greenville was growing.
Right.
And it's going to come back in that cycle again, and that's when we're going to start funding. That's when we need to start funding those projects. Now it's time when you tighten your belt. To me, a tight budget every 10 or 12 or however many years isn't a bad thing because it keeps the fat out of the city government. And so they've cut. Can they cut a little bit more? I think there's some areas that they could, but the council members, they have a tough job, and I'm sure they did what they thought was right. A majority of them did, but I didn't necessarily agree with it.
Well, in the new budget, they also did include a pay increase for employees of 1.5%, which is going to be about $450,000. I'm not saying I'm against our employees having raises. I want them to be paid well. I want them to like their jobs. However, it does not make sense to me to have an employee pay raise, but a tax increase on the citizens. That doesn't. I don't know. What do you think about? That seems like 2 totally different areas. Don't understand that.
where are the softball questions y'all going to ask? The employees for the city of Greenville, they do a great job,
Yes,
and
they do.
I think that they deserve to pay raise this time. I don't know if I would agree more with the merit pay, but currently the city of Greenville doesn't have a very good. We're trying to implement what we think is a good merit system on who do you give everybody the merit pay or who deserves it. Greenville Utilities has a great merit pay system. I wish we would copy theirs and use that, but the employees of for the city of Greenville, they needed to pay raise, and it's probably I know there's talk that they should have gotten a higher pay raise, but that's all we could afford.
Right.
And,
So when was the last time they had received a raise?
I'm supposed to know that.
Did
but,
they get one every year, every
no,
2 years? Or?
They might have gotten 1% the year before, and then that might have been 2 years before that. But you know, when I first got on the council, they were getting 4 or 5% a year every
Right.
year, and so it's just. But it's lean economic times, and I know
Yeah.
in my profession, I've taken a pay cut
Right.
the last 6 years, and I know a lot of folks have.
That's what I was going to
real
say. A
estate,
normal
we sure
business, small business owner, when they're tightening their belt, usually can't give their employees raises. And so it just seemed like, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, good idea. Just want discussion on it.
Yeah, well, I think we got some good employees, and if you want good employees, you're gonna have to pay them. But they got excellent benefits.
Right.
They've got retirement. They've got health insurance. They've got a 401k that the city's put money in, and their retirement. But we've got some good employees,
Right.
and I don't think the pay rate, the tax increase was done to fund the pay raise, and so.
No, it
but
wasn't.
that's a tough issue.
Right. Very interesting.
Well, it is. What incentive, Max, and this is my ignorance when you are putting these budgets together, and I know with municipal budgets, the revenues and expenditures are supposed to be the same. What incentive does a department have to be under budget outside of getting their budget cut the next year?
Well, that's why we got a good city manager, and she's supposed to review. So that's why if you bring have these budget workshops and bring each department in, we can kind of look and you can see if the last 3 months of the year they had excess money in their budget and they used it to buy stuff that maybe wasn't needed. And but I just don't think that the council spent the level of they just didn't have any workshops or any meetings where the public could come in or they could talk to the department head. Most of the city council folks, you're dealing with the city manager on issues. But at these budget meetings, when it was set up 2 years ago, the department heads was brought in. So the city council members got a chance to ask the department heads about their budget instead of going through the city manager on everything.
But I guess it goes back again to what I was saying. And you've been in business, and we had 500 employees at Overton's, and I can tell you a $10 hour employee can cost you a lot of money. Someone down the line can cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it goes back to what incentive, if there's no extra pay for them to do it, whether it's a bonus system set up, if they're given a $10 million budget, they come in at 9, a percentage of that is given out in bonuses to everyone for being more efficient. Is there anything like that in our city, or is it they've got to be careful, but they got to use their budget because if they're not too careful, they're going to get cut the next year, which seems to be how bureaucracy's done.
Well, that's why you've got to have a good city manager. It's got to be someone that you trust that's looking at the budget. And so I have complete confidence in the city manager, so I'm sure she looked at that. And I know she asked for reductions in 2 or 3 of the department's budget. And so she might have seen where they weren't spending all their money
Right.
that they'd been budgeted a year before, or maybe not in an efficient manner.
Well, it's been an interesting 5 or 6 months so far.
It has been. And what would be the next big project for the city council to look at? They're done so-called with this budget. They've
Taking care of unfortunate
taken
related is
care
done.
of was not the word I was looking for, but of the 4 unrelated. So that's out.
The
What's the next thing?
Yeah, the 4 unrelated, to me, it was just a waste of time because they grandfathered everything in. I think I rode through the neighborhood. The neighborhood was much cleaner because the cars couldn't park there. The students weren't. It was working.
Right.
And I think we planted a flower there that was starting to grow, and we ripped it up before it had time to bloom. But everybody who applied, the 50 or 60 folks, all got grandfathered. So I don't really know by repealing that what was
it
done.
really
Everybody who wanted to go with the 4 had already gotten.
Has it caused any issue? Crime is down in that area significantly,
Yeah,
and the houses look quite a bit better.
And I think the
area.
houses, they're selling for more, so the prices are holding
That's
their
right.
Oh
going up.
yeah, good. The ones
That's
around
a
the
good thing.
chancellor's house, I'd say everyone else should be very happy with those 3 houses selling for comps.
What's Greenville got? We've got the river study coming back.
That's right.
You've got the 10th Street connector that's going to go through, and I think the between 10th Street and Dixon Avenue, to me that's going to be the hot area now.
I think so too.
I'd love to see someone come in and look at that, and maybe put some money in and economically develop that area.
Well, we've only got a couple minutes left. We're going to go to break, but really quickly, bond referendum. You had your opinion that, and I feel the same way. We really hurt our ability to try to push this thing through. And I think it's going to be done in 2 or 3 different votes, probably. Your roads, your parks.
It'll be divided into 3 bonds.
Right. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? And does Greenville? I mean, we got a decent committee, some pretty good people in there. Having the opportunity to serve, but do we have a chance of getting this thing through from what you're hearing out there?
I just think with the tax increase, I mean, people aren't going to pay but so much. I mean, the economy's not back yet, and I just think it was either have a tax increase or do the or do the bonds, and I just don't think people are going to support both. I haven't seen what they've brought back, and so I don't know if I would or wouldn't support it. I wouldn't do the parks at this time. I would do the roads and the infrastructure. Right. And
well, I think we're going to have to do something about the existing park facilities, but I am not in favor. Wouldn't be in favor
$10.5 million.
of
That's strong.
of new facilities at this time. I just don't see how.
But where's the money going to come from?
Yeah.
Unless you did a bond referendum, but people
have to do a
people aren't going
bond.
to pay but so much. We've got to grow ourselves out. You can't tax yourself out of it. Businesses won't come to Greenville.
Well, Matt, I got to thank you for being on. We do have to go to a commercial break. It's been really cool having you back on here.
I enjoy it, and y'all doing a great job just letting the folks in Greenville know what's going on and just keeping the debate going. And but I was on the city council for 6 years. I loved it. It was a great job. The pay wasn't really good, and the media scrutiny I didn't really appreciate. But the job is actually good.
That goes with the job.
That's right. But thank y'all for letting me come on today.
We're going to take another commercial break. We'll be right back in 2 minutes.
Welcome back to Greenville Grit. Again, I'm Terry Williams here
Michael
with
Overton.
Michael.
That's right.
And we had a wonderful guest on today.
Well, it was quite a surprise. He
It
just
was.
happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, but we
Or
were
the
able
right
to.
place.
Hey, for us, it was the right place, and hopefully for the
Absolutely.
citizens, because he has got unbelievable insight for serving
Yes,
6
he
years.
does.
Such a strong business background, understands economic development, and what it takes to get our city going. So Max is a big asset for the city. We're fortunate to
I
have
think
him
so,
for
too.
so many years.
I think so too. I always appreciated the way that Max always came forth with the comments and good common sense about what needed to be done. Unlike this last city council meeting, I never heard Rick Croskery say a word about the budget.
Well,
until
it's
it
four
was
and a
time
half
to-
hour meeting.
until it was
Alan
time to
actually called me and
raise
said,
his hand to vote.
"Why'd you leave?" I said, 4.5 hours. I was
know.
numb. I couldn't feel anything anymore.
It was just
I mean,
too long.
Everyone has to have, they feel like they have to talk and speak on every single issue, and you don't.
All right.
Some things, they knew how they were going to vote. It was
Exactly.
obvious how they were going to vote. Let's just get it over with and move on.
Well, it just seems like they are doing an awful lot of talking on the city council and not letting the public do hardly any
Well,
talking.
and it kind of goes back, to be honest. I mean, some people aren't going to like it, but it's the 4 versus 2. It's the block of 4.
That's right.
Is almost how it's going to be done. And I hope that it doesn't stay that way. It doesn't need to stay that way, not for our city, because how they criticized it, one side criticized it last year.
That's right.
It's going to come back on this. You know, it's one side or the other, and it shouldn't be that way. We're one Greenville. We need to act like one Greenville. But we got some special news. You and I have something big coming
That's
up.
right.
Friday morning,
Tell 'em
Terry
all
and I
about
are going to be co-hosting Talk of the Town with Trent
With
McGee.
Trent. It's going to be an interesting morning.
Henry is putting it in our laps, and we hope not to mess it up.
And I wish it was a little bit later than 7.
7 o'clock. Yeah, well, I'm
It's
a little
early for
bit
me.
shorter than 2 hours. I don't know. We can fill up 30
we'll find
minutes,
something
Terry,
to
but
talk about.
We're going to have a lot to talk about. Outside of the shooting, you know, it's very unfortunate last night. I think Bianca Schoenman, director of Uptown Greenville, you did a good job of reacting and saying, look, we're going to have the umbrella market. We're going to be
Right.
We're going to continue business as normal. I think Chief Aiden has done such a wonderful job.
They were on top of it. Greenville
I mean, they
City
were
Police,
there. They
all
got
of-
the
yeah.
guys coming out of the parking lot.
That's right.
So that is
That's a good thing.
fantastic. It's unfortunate someone lost their life.
Right.
But, I pray for their families and I pray for the city too, because we got to continue to improve that.
Exactly.
But make sure you tune in tonight, 6:30. Obviously, you're tuning in if you're listening to this, but
That's
also
right.
Friday night, 6:30 on Cable 7. Saturday morning at 9:30, Cable 7.
That's right.
And Talk of the Town, 7 to 9 on Friday morning.
Friday
to
morning. We'll see what happens.
Hear how we do.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on the Greenville Grit, listening to myself, Terry, and Max. And make sure you email us any questions at greenvillegrit@gmail.com. Terry, you want to wrap it up with anything?
One of the best things that happened at the city council meeting on Thursday night was honoring the World War II veterans.
Very cool.
The council set aside June as World War II Veteran Month. So.
That was really cool. And real quick, if you download the History app, do that. Look up the World
Right.
Wars. Fantastic show. It really gives you a
Great.
lot of history.
It
So
does.
thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.